My name is Caressa Nordyke, and I'll be reading Food versus You. This is exciting. You've signed up to take a travel writing class, and the destination is New Orleans, Louisiana. You had to fight tooth and nail with your parents for months for them to even consider allowing you to go on this trip. They didn't want to send their baby girl off to some unknown, dangerous place all by herself. Your parents' unhelpful friends fueled their fears in unhelpful ways. But you are determined. You are persistent. You recruited persistent friends to advocate on your behalf, and you prevailed. Being the adventurer you are ready to set out for New Orleans to discover the city for yourself. Furthermore, you are a food person. You love food and are always ready to eat. In fact, this is what you find most exciting about going on this trip, all the food. New Orleans is a food place. There are just one or two slight problems, though, which you must confront when you set out on your adventure. You have strict food rules. Your strict food rules. Rule number 1, you are a texture person, or more specifically, not a texture person. You just can't handle some textures of food. Rule number 2, you cannot handle spicy food at all. Rule number 3, you don't really like trying new things, especially a whole plateful at a time. Rule number 4, you eat one thing at a time until you're completely finished with it. And rule number 5, you hate your food touching other food. What folks might conclude about your strict food rules. You might be just a little bit of a picky eater. What you might conclude about being adventurous. So maybe there are more than just one or two slight problems with being adventurous and going to a new place with so many new food options. Oh dear barbecue. Voodoo's Barbecue and Grill Uptown. When you arrive in New Orleans, it's 9:30 p.m. and you are starving. You're with 5 other people, and a place called Voodoo's Barbecue and Grill is recommended to you. You all walk the 2 blocks to the restroom that seems to the restaurant. You all walk the 2 blocks to the restaurant that seems to be more than 2 miles because you're so famished. You stagger past the tattoo parlor, the Chinese place, and the laundromat, the place between you and the food. When you walk through Voodoo's doors, you pause. You grimace slightly as you scan the menu, realizing you should probably add a new rule to the list. Number 6, you don't really like barbecue. It's all barbecue or something you've never heard of. You will eat it, but you prefer to eat other foods instead. After much contemplation, you finally settle on a pulled pork sandwich. You study the restaurant as you wait for your food. It's small and dark. They like red neon, the walls are painted yellow, and the wall across from you is covered in mirrors. Normally, you drown the barbecue meat in barbecue sauce, but you decide to try a little of the meat before dousing it. To your surprise, it's delicious. It has great flavor already, and it's so tender and moist. You eat all of the meat out of the sandwich without barbecue sauce, wondering why they don't serve barbecue like that at home. Food 0, you 1. You expected to like this meal, but you were thoroughly shocked by just how wonderful the barbecue was. Another favorite, fried chicken. Willie Mae's Grocery and Deli Uptown. The next day, you eat lunch at Willie Mae's, known for its famous fried chicken. The walls are yellow here too, the booths are black, and the chairs red. On the wall behind you are pictures from local artists. Although not your favorite, you like fried chicken more than barbecue. Playing it safe, you ordered fried chicken nuggets. You really like chicken nuggets. When your order arrives, the chicken nuggets look funny. They are a deep, almost orange color, and they aren't in nice little flat shapes, and you wonder, what are they serving me? Little chicken nuggets instead of processed mystery meat? The nuggets vary in size. Some are very small, and some quite large for nuggets. They are round and bubbling, with bits of batter attached, making you think the nuggets have boils or warts. You tear one in half so it can cool before you eat it. The meat looks okay, nice and white with juices running out, There is a red sauce you can see that started to saturate the meat. You pick up your first piece and dunk it into the ranch dressing and then pop it into your mouth. It's still hot, but it has good flavor, a lot more flavor than frozen chicken nuggets do. You eat several more nuggets, enjoying the burst of flavor in your mouth. Then you feel it. This chicken is screaming hot and not in the temperature way. You start sucking your Dr. Pepper down, trying to douse your taste buds to alleviate the burning sensation in your mouth. How had you been able to eat so much of this chicken before noticing how incredibly spicy it was? Why didn't you think sooner to drown the chicken in the cool ranch dressing? Once some of the pain in your mouth subsides, you eat a few more pieces before calling it quits, accepting defeat of the taste buds. Food won, you won. Although you initially liked the flavor, it was far too spicy for you to actually enjoy. Violation of rule number 2. More barbecue. Bullet Sports Bar, 7th Ward. You had an errand planning and end up running out of time to eat at a restaurant. Really, your professor led the way onto the wrong streetcar. And you ended up riding it all the way to the wrong end, and then getting back on the streetcar and riding it all the way back to the other end. It was only an hour and a half on the streetcar, not that you're keeping track. Now you're at a sports bar, and there's a guy outside serving food from a portable grill. Barbecue food. You decide to try the ribs this time. The friendly cook brings you your plate full of ribs, a sausage, a roll, and potato salad. You start with the roll, a Hawaiian roll that is drying out. Then you tackle the potato salad. This is the best potato salad you have ever tasted. You now only want to eat more potato salad. Unfortunately, your spoonful of potato salad runs out much too quickly, leaving you just a little bit sad. You turn your attention to the next food item, tackling the sausage next because it should be less messy than the ribs. Notice you are following the eat one thing at a time rule number 4. You have silently been observing the others eat their ribs as you try to determine the best way to eat the ribs and still stay clean. You decide to start by cutting all 4 ribs apart so that you can keep your fingers clean for as long as possible. After taking a deep breath, you pick up the first rib, examine it, and bite into the side near your right hand. Barbecue sauce gets on your cheek with the first bite. So much for staying clean. You take a few more bites and realize that these ribs are pretty tender and they have a ton of delicious flavor, even though they aren't drenched in barbecue sauce. By the time you reach the 4th rib, you're feeling pretty full and can't eat but 3 bites from it. You look at your hands and grimace. Typically, you like clean, dry hands, and your hands are definitely neither of those now. You do your best to wipe away the gunk of rib remains onto your plate, and then use the one tissue paper thin napkin to try and clean both of your hands and your face from ear to ear. After doing your best, you head straight for the bathroom to use soap and water. Leaving Bullet's Bar that night, you see a tub of potato salad sitting by the guy cooking. The best tasting potato salad you have ever tasted came out of a 2-gallon bucket. It wasn't homemade, it was mass-produced and dropped into a huge tub, and yet it was the best tasting potato salad you've ever had. Food won, you too. Again, you're surprised by just how delicious barbecue can be. Tastes so good. Café du Monde, French Quarter. The group of girls you're with keep telling you that you have to try these fried donut things. You can't hear well enough to tell what letters they are saying, so you don't even know what they are called. At some point, one of them tells you these still nameless things are kind of like a funnel cake. You love funnel cakes, so you agree to try them. You arrive at a cafe in a tent. Normally, when it's warm, there is only a roof to the tent, but because New Orleans is so cold this week, the sides are rolled down and small heaters hang from the ceiling. All of you look at the menu. Now these things have a name because you can see the letters that make up the word. Beignets. You each get your own ordered beignets. When they arrive, they look like snow-covered mountains. There are bits of golden brown peeking out from under a pile of fluffy powdered sugar. You shake a little powdered sugar off the first beignet and take a cautious bite. It's absolutely wonderful. It's like a funnel cake and a sopapilla had a baby. You eat the remaining 2 beignets and think to yourself, I could eat these every day. Food 1, you 3. These are one of the best things you've eaten in New Orleans. You clearly won this food battle. Caution, avoid at all costs. Your fearless friends are braver than you are and order things like jambalaya and gumbo. They even seem to enjoy them. You decide you can push the adventure up a notch and try a bite or 2 of their jambalaya and gumbo. You could only manage to eat 1 bite from each restaurant. All of these dishes were shades of brown and lumpy looking, reminding you of the gunk in the gutter after it rains. You tried about 4 bites of these foods at each restaurant. It was a little different tasting from the previous. You think they are fairly similar. The bites you had eaten ranged from just a little spicy to there's no way you could eat more than a spoonful you just choked down. Violation of rule number 2. You can't handle spicy foods. Both of these dishes have several things just thrown in one bowl, which also goes against your no foods touching rule number 5. You don't spend enough time focused on what you're about to eat to even identify what you're shoving in your mouth. It's better that way. You remember tasting sausage in one dish. Another reminds you of Zatarain's boxed rice your parents used to fix when you were little. You didn't like it then, and sure enough, you don't like it now. Food 3, you 3. Both the jambalaya and the gumbo got the better of you. So good, so hot. Paratul's Bar, Irish Channel. When you arrive, you open the door, and it's solid people and a bar inside. The group decides to try to find somewhere new to eat instead, before noticing another entrance for the restaurant. You open the door to the restaurant side, and there's not a soul in sight. You think to yourself, so they have good beer and crappy food. Nonetheless, you walk to the counter and place your order. You are being extra brave. You are finally trying a po' boy sandwich, a shrimp po' boy sandwich. By yourself. You eat the first half of the sandwich. It is fantastic. The shrimp is fabulous, and you think you could eat this for every meal. You notice it slowly, and then it hits fast and hard. Your mouth is on fire. You drink more Dr. Pepper, using it as a fire extinguisher, trying to suffocate the fire that is in your mouth. You get your mouth somewhat under control and try to eat the remaining shrimp that is still delightful. When you finally quit eating it, even your lips are flaming hot for several minutes. Food 4, you 3. Delicious in the beginning, this meal left your poor mouth burning after eating the shrimp, violating rule number 2. Bursting with flavor, yet still bland. The Praline Connection Restaurant. Red beans and rice is another favorite in New Orleans. You decide to be extra daring one evening and order a pork chop with red beans and rice. Once again, you frown when your plate arrives. The rice is piled in the middle of a sea of red beans, and to the left the pork chop is floating like a barge on the Mississippi River. The first thing you do is scrape the beans away from the pork chop as best you can. You take a deep breath and start cutting the pork chop. There is an explosion of flavor in your mouth. You can taste something like shake and bake, but there's so much more flavor in the mix, and the meat is moist. After you eat this, you get a fork full of red beans and a few grains of rice. Open up and dump the fork into your mouth. It's not bad, but it's not good either. There's no cheese. You grew up eating Mexican rice and beans, and red beans and rice has no flavor compared to Mexican beans and rice. You eat a few more bites of this, wishing there was a bowl full of shredded cheese you could dump in the beans. You finally dig into your cornbread that is still warm. You're happy to be eating a familiar food. Food 5, you 4. The pork chop was delightful, and the beans and rice were rather disappointing, resulting in a tie for this battle. This meal violated rules 4 and 5 for food touching and having to eat the rice and beans together. How could something so good be so bad? Sucre, the Garden District. You like ice cream. No, you love ice cream. And you end up at a place that sells gelato. It's close enough to ice cream. This small store reminds you of the Ruffled Cup, your favorite cupcake place in Amarillo. You ordered all things Nola, a sundae. This sundae is made up of banana Foster sauce, whatever that is, Brown butter pecan gelato, that's the ice cream part. Bread pudding, whatever that is, and roasted pecans. It really doesn't sound very good, but the picture on the menu was pretty. When the sundae arrives, it looks promising. This sundae was huge. Good thing you'd already decided to split it. You start eating the whipped cream that is drizzled in caramel sauce that is like a small mountain atop the sundae. After several bites, you finally find the gelato. It's nothing short of a glorious taste in your mouth, the caramel and whipped topping only adding to that flavor. The roasted pecans are crunchy, almost too hard. The banana Foster sauce, which you still can't identify but something in your mouth tastes like banana, isn't your favorite but won't deter you from eating it. Then it happens. You get a piece of bread pudding on your spoon. Your eyes bulge a little once the bread pudding hits your tongue. You choke it down as quickly as possible and vow to yourself to never eat bread pudding ever again. This is a huge violation of rule number 1, textures. Unfortunately for you, another piece sneaks its way into your unsuspecting mouth. You are immediately surprised by this thing in your mouth and then feel sick to your stomach. You do all you can to keep from throwing up the bread pudding before you get it swallowed. You take a few more careful bites so your mouth doesn't remember that texture and call it quits while you're still ahead. Food 6, U5. The whipped cream and gelato was fantastic, but the bread pudding was almost too much for you to handle. Clearly, rule number 1 was violated. You lose this battle. Simply Tasty, Napoleon House French Quarter. A writer you're having dinner with tells you this restaurant, named Napoleon House, because this is where Napoleon was going to live, had men actually rescued him and brought him back to New Orleans. You are seated in a dimly lit back room, and the walls are all shades of dark brown. Most of the choices on the menu involve muffaletta. You don't really know what that means, but it entails olives, and that's a no-no. You finally decide to settle on the ham, po' boy, and Swiss cheese. To your delight, you're able to get the sandwich served warm. When it arrives, the sandwich is much larger than you expected it to be. The bread on this po' boy was much better than the previous po' boy that you had. The sandwich reminds you of the sandwich you make at school on a hoagie bun. Although a very simple meal, you still thoroughly enjoyed it. Food 6, U6. The simplest meal you ate while in New Orleans was a safe choice. You win this round. New meat, bad idea. Something Else Cafe, French Quarter. On your final day in New Orleans, you were feeling extra adventurous and decided to try a bit of alligator. You wondered to yourself if you could have floated over the top of this alligator's brother or sister while you were on the swamp tour the day before. The alligator is in burger form, almost like a giant alligator sausage patty. But the patty is spicy. That's the first thing wrong with it. And it tastes like sausage. That's the second thing wrong with it. You realize quickly that you took a bigger bite than you should have. You've been telling your parents whenever you try something new. You tell your dad that you tried alligator. He responds, "Have you seen where those things live and what they eat? It can't taste good. But glad you tried it." It was definitely not the worst thing you tasted on this trip, but it wasn't one of the best things you've tasted either. You chew and chew, trying to get the alligator swallowed as soon as possible. You can now say that you've tried alligator, even if you were in no hurry to eat any more of it. Food 7, U6. This meal technically broke rules number 1 and 3, texture and spicy. This is a good example of why you should not try new things. Try not to drool. Mr. Apple, French Quarter. You've never had a real caramel apple, the kind with a stick in the middle that has been dipped in caramel. You pick out a butterfingered caramel apple in this cute little shop that was full of treats covered in chocolate and caramel. This is the biggest apple you've ever seen, easily larger than a softball. It took a little work to get a slice pulled apart, but the first bite is well worth the struggle. The caramel is absolutely superb, and the butterfinger adds crunch. There is an abundance of caramel pulled at the bottom, and you quickly become more interested in the enticing caramel than the actual apple. One piece of caramel that you pull off looks like a mustache, so naturally you put it on your lip. By the time you finish eating the apple, you are pretty sure you have caramel strung from ear to ear and nose to chin. Food 7, you 7. Even though this was technically something new, you have no complaints about the caramel apple. The final victor. The trip ultimately had to come to an end. You look back on all the food that you ate while in New Orleans and smile. Maybe an onlooker would question whether you are truly an adventurer. However, you argue that you are one heck of an adventurer, as long as adventure stays within the narrow parameter that are your food rules. You learn on this trip that perhaps rule number 3, avoiding trying new things, should be removed from the list. You decide to examine your rules to see if there are any others that can be crossed off the list. After careful consideration, it is clear they are staying. You still can't handle some textures. You still can't eat spicy foods. You still eat only one thing at a time, and you still don't like your food touching. Did all of the new things you tried work out for you? Absolutely not. But enough of the new things you tried did work out quite well for you. The winner of the food battle is decidedly you.